Hey everyone, welcome to the final video in this 4-part series. If you have watched part 1, part 2, and part 3 and you have made it through to the final part and you're watching the part 4, thank you. I congratulate you. I mean, you know, obviously all this stuff is extremely interesting to me. And for those of you out there who are interested in whatever, in investigating this whole event, this whole thing that went down with Astroworld and with Travis, you know, you're probably just collecting information. But if you're interested in astrology, this is a really great way to, you know, just kind of like dip your toes in and kind of like get an idea of how you can connect a chart to real life, you know, and to kind of start to dissect the pieces and things like that. Okay. With that being said, like I've been studying astrology. Like I've always been interested in astrology, but I started studying astrology in 2020, like literally when COVID hit. I just found that as a great reason to get into the things that I really, really wanted to get into and that I was really passionate about. And, you know, when you don't have a job and you're, you know, just at home every single day, you know, just reading books and just kind of like diving into it, you know, you just kind of like absorb it. I just like ate it. I just like ate it all up, you know. I just felt like I was like eating it alive, that along with tarot, you know. So, you know, I feel like I have, generally speaking, a pretty good grasp on this stuff. But, you know, just to let you know, like, I'm still learning a lot, okay? Like, I'm still learning and, you know, I'm still growing. And the great thing about astrology is that there's always so much more to learn. And that is why I love, that I started this new series, you know, called Investigative Astrology, where where I'm just going to film different videos investigating, I don't know, maybe like different events or things that happen. So we'll see how it unfolds. But ultimately, because this is the conclusion video, this is the conclusory video, I just kind of wanted to mention that right from the beginning, right before I get into just kind of breaking down or just kind of like comparing basically, like so what I'm basically going to do, as you see the chart next to me, is we're just putting the Astroworld chart and the Travis Scott chart side by side. That's all we're doing. So if you watch the Astroworld video and the Travis Scott video, we looked at the chart with the aspect patterns in the middle, and we kind of like broke things down there. This is going to be a little bit more, you know, just kind of like comparing certain things, you know, and just more of like the major things that have popped out to me, and just kind of pinpointing, you know, some of the things that I found, significant. Okay. So it's a really, really enriching and fulfilling journey to be on, this astrology journey. So I really hope that you guys enjoyed these videos, considering how long they are, you know. I hope that you were able to learn something from it. I hope you found some kind of enjoyment from it. I hope that you were able to, I don't know, maybe like pick up on something, you know, and, kind of like absorb some of the information that I was putting out there. Okay, so I'm like super, super excited that I'm kind of like, this, like, as I mentioned in my introduction, this whole thing that happened just kind of like, it just like really affected me on a deeper level, and it like, you know, it really took me through this whole process and like an inner journey as well, relating to my own concert experiences, that just really made me feel a strong desire to kind of investigate and bring it into the astrology light, you know, bring it into the astrological community to kind of shine a light on it, right? To shine a light on it and to try to kind of figure out what's going on over here. And things like that. Okay, So before I like ramble on and on and on, okay, so I do have it in front of me. So we're taking a look. So as you can see, like when you're comparing charts side by side, so one of the charts are going to be on the inside wheel and one is going to be on the outside. The one that's on the outside wheel is the one that is transiting through the inside wheel. Now, typically when you pull up a chart and you're comparing two different charts, typically you'll want, especially if you are comparing the current astrology in the solar system to your own chart, you would want to look to see where the current astrology is transiting in your chart, because your chart, the houses in your chart are fixed. So you want to see what area of your life this energy that is going on around you, what area of your life is it affecting, okay? But because I don't have an accurate time for Travis Scott's birth and his house placements might not be accurate, I decided to do it the other way around, to where we're just kind of gonna like flip it. And I decided to put him on the outside. So it kind of has this, it has this other quality to it where it's actually Travis's energy. And I feel like it brings in a really interesting dynamic to analyze it in this way, because he was the main character in this drama, right? Like, he is the main character in this whole Astroworld drama, okay? And what we're specifically looking at when we're looking at the Astroworld chart, which is the one on the inside, okay? So you can like kind of like see how they're separated. So the inside chart is the Astroworld chart, and then the outside chart is Travis Scott's transiting the Astroworld chart, okay? So because he is kind of like the main character in this, I was like, you know what? You know, it'll work out. It'll work out because the synchronicities, just like, you know, either way, there are certain planets that are going to line up regardless, right? Things are going to line up regardless, you know, if you put him on the inside or him on the outside. The only thing that might be different is like the house that it's in, okay? Or the area of life. And in that case, it's like, you know, you would be looking at Travis Scott's area of life. But when we're analyzing, we're not analyzing, in this case, his life and his chart. We're analyzing what happened, right? Since we're looking at that night of Astroworld, since we are looking at that particular event in the moment that it happened, it actually makes perfect sense to put his chart on the outside to see where he in particular was, where were his planets in position, and how was his energy kind of like affecting this greater picture dynamic. And he was the main character in the drama, so it's just kind of like, it just kind of makes sense to do that, okay? Okay, so aside from my super long explanation, I'm not going to get into the moons. If you watch the other two videos, you already heard my explanation about the moon. But, you know, as you can see, you know, if Travis Scott does have a Sagittarius moon, his moon in Sagittarius is in 0 degree. It's in conjunction with the Astroworld's moon in Sagittarius. But that's not even like, there are definitely other things here. There are definitely other energies that are crowning. There are definitely other energies in Travis Scott's chart that for me personally point to much more significance, okay? And the one that's the most significant, in my personal opinion, is that Cancer energy, okay? That Cancer energy that you see in the in Astroworld's first and second house, along with that Jupiter in Leo. So, if you remember from the second video, from the Astroworld video, I mentioned how the first quadrant was completely empty, so it takes away, you know, so for that evening, it kind of like you know, the individual for this Astroworld chart, there was no kind of like individual in them. The individual was kind of taken out of the equation for a bigger picture, for this greater experience that involves, you know, your relationships with other people, this experience with other people, this experience with like the initial community that's around you. Okay. Now, when you look in this chart, you can see that it's interesting that his and for the Astroworld chart, it was Cancer that was on that second house, right? It was on that, it was opposing the Saturn and Aquarius. Remember, we were talking about the T-square, and you want to look at that opposite. You want to look at that. You want to look in that kind of like opposite direction in order to gain clues, perhaps, as to like, what was the unconscious energy that was kind of like what was that blind spot? What was the blind spot? What was the unconscious energy that was kind of like coming through over here, as to why this like tragedy happened, why this happened? Okay, so remember we were talking about the T-square in Astroworld with the Saturn and Aquarius as the focal point. Also another thing to note is that, and this is also, I probably should have said this first because it's actually super significant. Travis Scott began his Saturn return in February of 2021, this year. And for those who don't know, a Saturn return is it's such a big transition in reference to like your career and the direction that your life and your career is going. And no doubt this is definitely, you know, I mean, it started earlier this year for him, especially announcing that he was releasing his new album, Utopia. But typically when a Saturn return comes, I remember my Saturn return was crazy intense. Oh my, it was just, it was so intense. And when you begin your Saturn return, it's marked with a lot of like, you know, a lot of feelings of like change and like that pressure from Saturn returning to the same sign in which you were born in. It really kind of, it really emphasizes that energy to make you kind of question your own direction in life and to question your own career, to question, you know, what are you doing, right? Like, what's your direction here? Like, where's your career going? Where's your professional life going? And they are, and he is in the midst of his Saturn return. Okay, so if you take a look, you can see the Astroworld Saturn in Aquarius in the 8th house is at 7 degrees, and then Travis Scott's is at 6 degrees. Okay, so they're in conjunction, and that Saturn in Aquarius was the focal point of the Astroworld T-square. And Travis Scott's Saturn in Aquarius is part of a T-square configuration with his sun in Taurus as the apex point, okay? So this is a lot of like very intense kind of energy kind of merging together. And, you know, it's almost like it has manifested itself out into the world, right? It has like, you know, it tends to, the chart that we are born with, we tend to kind of like, and whatever aspect patterns appear in our chart, like T-squares or yads or whatever, we tend to kind of like subconsciously or unconsciously kind of create that type of reflection. We create that which we, that pattern which we inhabit within us. We kind of project that same energy outward into the world, okay? So by projecting it, it kind of like it kind of creates this ability to experience, to kind of come across those same patterns and experience it. It's like the law of attraction, okay? So if you guys know about the law of attraction, what you kind of like, what you project, what you are as a person, you kind of like bring back into your life. Okay. So it was almost like, you know, it creates this like mirror image. It kind of creates this, this crazy experience where you have to become, you know, in order to understand your own patterns, you have to witness the projection of that pattern coming back at you. So I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah, hopefully that made sense. So that Saturn in Aquarius in the 8th house was kind of like one of the biggest indicators of just that, you know, along with the Pluto and Capricorn, but I would say Pluto and Capricorn welcomed the energy, but that T-square between Saturn and Aquarius, Uranus and Taurus, and the Sun and Scorpio is what kind of like made that happen in the fixed signs, right? It kind of like created that surge, okay? And then you have Travis Scott Saturn in Aquarius in conjunction with the astral in Aquarius. And there you have his Saturn return, which indicates intense energy right off the bat. Okay, so that's a little preview. So that's super significant. So I mentioned, like, you know, if you want to kind of look for clues, other clues as to like, what was the subconscious energy going on here, or what was the unconscious energy that was that led to a lot of this like trauma and that led to these things happening. Well, this is where things get really, really interesting. Okay. And this is where, you know, like you have to like kind of understand a little bit about past lives. You have to understand about past life regression and karma, and just like, how energy will travel through time, okay? Like, and how energy kind of travels in this really, like, it finds a channel to express itself. It finds a channel to express itself, okay? That channel of expression has a lot to do with trauma, and it has a lot to do with pain and deeper wounds, okay? So when we're looking at, when we are wanting to investigate the reason, let's say, why it happened, you know, like on a deeper level, I'm not talking about structurally. I'm not talking about like, oh, because Travis Scott didn't stop the show. Like, that's easy. Those answers are easy. Like when we're really, when we really want to investigate energy, you need to look at your blind spot, okay? And remember how I was like, so you got to take a look at the opposite of where that focal point was, or that apex point, which is the 2nd house. And the 2nd house in the Astroworld chart was completely empty. But because Travis Scott was the star of this show, he had, and because like his music and who he is as a person projects itself out into the mainstream, right? Like his energy, his music, who he is as a person, his stage presence, it is a form of manifestation. It is a form of projection. It is this like, there is energy that is being released, not just at a conscious level, but also at a subconscious level and at an unconscious level, okay? Like in ways that he might not even be aware of, you know? It's kind of like that feeling like you have some deeper shit going on inside you, but it's like, well, you're not just gonna like talk about it to anybody, right? So, when we're looking at the 2nd house, you know, of course, like we said in the Astroworld chart, the 2nd house is empty. So we're going to move into the next one over, which is Travis's chart. And he's got that South Node and Chiron in Cancer right there, okay? The exact opposition, the opposition to that Saturn in Aquarius is actually that Jupiter in Leo. So the fact that like you know, he was, you know, so the biggest clue, I guess you could say, or the more like direct, the more surfacey clue, the more basic explanation perhaps as to why this happened is that it was just too big, okay, and he was the energy of that night, the Astroworld Fest, him going on stage, that concert, all those people, it was too big, okay, and he was a performer. He was focused on his entertainment. And the fact that that's part of his T-square indicates another reason as to why his instinct was to keep going, you know. So his intuition, and this is, I mentioned this in another video where I said his intuition was compromised, okay? So his intuition was a little compromised as far as like trying to pinpoint the bigger picture of what was going on, okay? Especially because he does have his Sun in Taurus as a focal point of a T-square and his Mercury in Aries as a focal point of a T-square. So that other energy, like that Cancer energy, which is in opposition with that Capricorn energy, it becomes compromised, okay? It becomes compromised for the sake of the focal point, for the sake of that apex energy, which is like, which is his, you know, his music, right? His music and him, you know, he's the star of the show, right? And, you know, ironically speaking, both of the apex points of both of his T-squares is falling in the 11th house of the Astroworld chart, which also kind of indicates this stage presence, and like it also indicates like, you know, this being part of this greater connection and being part of this greater network with the crowd, right? It's like, but his connection to the crowd was very, it was not really based in any kind of, it was his intuition in regards to what was really happening in that crowd. It was like compromised somehow, okay? So like maybe on a deeper, like instinctual level, like maybe he thought, like, you know, even if he did think something was going on, there was something was being compromised here, and it wasn't allowing him to stop it. Okay, so with the with his Jupiter in Leo opposing that Saturn in Aquarius, you know, it's like it's at that point, it's kind of like, how do I explain this? It's an opposition. It's at war with each other. So it's like there is this battle going on between him needing to perform, him needing to create entertainment for this bigger event, this huge thing that's going on. You know, this is like a magnanimous kind of like event. And it is in direct battle with all this energy of the people, of like, of, you know, maybe trying to understand, like in that moment, it's like there's so many people out there, and you know, you just kind of like hope that the people who are doing their jobs are doing their jobs. Okay, with that Saturn in Aquarius, it kind of references to like, it references to the structure of the event. So like the medics and the police officers and security and stuff like that. So there's this opposition between the people who are actually the ones in charge of controlling the event and him just being an entertainer. So I don't know if that's making sense. There was an opposition going on there. And though, and those two are not even the focal point for him. Do you see what I'm saying? So Travis Scott's apex and focal point was, you know, he has his sun in Taurus as the focal point. So those two things were just like I'm thinking now. I mean, I have no idea. I have no idea. Like, I remember watching this video, and these two guys came on stage and like said something to him, and I mean, who knows what they said to him? But from what it appeared like on stage, it did seem like he became aware of something. But there was this conflict between his entertainer. There was this conflict between that like entertainer part of him who needs to like entertain and needs to keep singing, and then this other part of him that had to do with like the crowd and whether or not things were going according to plan, right? That things were being taken care of. And we kind of see that reflecting in those videos where he stops, but then he continues. He like, you know, where him as an individual kind of stops for a moment to kind of like try to figure out the situation, and he seems a little conflicted, you know, like he perhaps is like, okay, you know, and then he'd be like, okay, let's take care of this situation. So you see how that kind of teeters? Like, so that Saturn and Aquarius is like, okay, let's take care of that situation. And then his Jupiter and Leo is like, okay, let's keep performing. So that's actually a perfect example of how a T-square in someone's chart how you can see it manifest in the person. So his sun in Taurus is that apex point who like stops for a moment and goes, okay, let's take care of that situation over there. And he's looking at those 2 points that he's in conflict with, which is like a situation with a crowd where a medic, you know, or somebody, you know, needs to do their job, and then going back to like being an entertainer, right? But now keeping in mind that sun in Taurus up there, he has that sun in Taurus up there. So even when he becomes that his individual self and he stops and he's like, you know, he even has something opposing. He's even in conflict with that because his sun in Taurus is conjunct the Uranus in Taurus. Okay. So, there's definitely this Astroworld's Uranus in Taurus is in conjunction with his sun in Taurus. So that adds on to this concentration of energy to like, you know, Uranus makes things very like uneasy, right? It's a little anxiety ridden. There's this need to like keep moving, okay? And his sun in Taurus is opposing Astroworld's sun in Scorpio. So now he's not just in conflict with things that are going on in the crowd and with his need to keep performing, but then he also has this other opposition to him, which is this other energy, this sun in Scorpio in the 5th house energy, this like energy, this like maybe even darker energy of like people like counting on him, or him like being able to sense that there is this other like very aggressive kind of energy out there. So he might have been picking up on that energy. He might have instinctually been kind of picking up on that, especially because his sun in Taurus is in opposition to his Pluto in Scorpio. Well, it's not an exact opposition. It is outside the 8-degree orb. But that Pluto, his Pluto in Scorpio was in conjunction to Astroworld's sun in Scorpio. I really hope that this is all making sense. So it was like, and Pluto, remember, represents in like this deeper like soul instinct. So his own Pluto in Scorpio, it's like staring. It's almost like you have this fear. It's almost like staring death in the face. It's almost like someone telling you, it's almost like this voice or some deeper part of you telling you like, dude, if you stop this show, it's not going to be good. Or like, if you stop this show, like shit's going to go down, or it's going to be, things are going to get much worse. Right. So that could have been like like something that you can bring up in reference to that. So that can also be kind of like some clue, you know, you can speculate that maybe, you know, that, because I know that like when the tickets went on sale, right, it was like May 5th or something like that, when those tickets went on sale, they sold out, and then he like tweeted, right, he had that tweet that was like, oh, we're going to sneak the wild ones in. And there could be this conscious awareness of knowing that there are people that come to his shows that are very rebellious, you know, and that perhaps they like to cause a ruckus. And then he also, you know, tends to kind of encourage that as well. You know, I think that it stems from his own. I think that stems from some of his own deeper kind of like, you know, that Mercury in Aries, that will and drive that he had, that a kind of aggressive nature that might come through in his music, can definitely reinforce and trigger people to want to continue to come to his shows, especially if he has fans that also feel that same kind of rage, and the ones that feel that same kind of aggression and anger. So there could definitely have been a sense of like awareness that there was some really, really like dark energies out there in the crowd. You know, and I know that like after this whole Astroworld thing went down and happened, he deleted that tweet like, oh, we're going to sink the wild ones in. So you can speculate, you know, like obviously like I'm not an actual like criminal detective, but you could speculate that there was some kind of plan put into place for people to sneak in. You can speculate that there was some kind of like, you know, there was some kind of plan, or someone took his tweet. You know, there could have been a person or a group of people, there could be people out there who took that tweet like, oh, we're going to see the wild ones in, who took that tweet to an extreme, you know, and there was definitely, it's very obvious that, you know, it's pretty clear to me that there was definitely plans amongst various groups of people that did not have tickets to the Astroworld show. There was a plan to actually break through the barriers and sneak in, and kind of fill in that stadium. So whether or not this was a plan that was instigated by Travis is obviously like, that's not something that I can like speak on. Like that's not something where it's like, oh, I see the answer in this chart in my magic crystal ball. No, okay, I don't see anything like that, okay? So I'm just kind of like going based off of my own observations, like, you know, like him, because it's kind of like, well, if you're going to tweet something and then delete it later, then that does kind of show that you're guilty of something. Like that's kind of how I take it. Like when, you know, even when Kylie deleted that video after everybody started attacking her, it's like, well, if you delete something after you post something, then there might be some truth to it. Otherwise, why would you delete it, right? I mean, you can definitely argue against that. You can definitely make some kind of other argument like, oh, well, maybe they just felt pressure to delete it. And it's like, in all honesty, like even if Travis Scott himself did not make some kind of like did not like plan, like actually lay out some plan for a bunch of people to sneak in and like, and, you know, flood that show, like creating a big crowd surge. Even if he did not plan it, like even just tweet, like when you're a famous person, even just tweeting that, like, oh, we're going to sneak the wild ones in, is automatically like the people, there are people out there who take that shit seriously. Like there are people out there who might be like, that was our cue. That's our signal. We got to get our group together, right? I mean, there's all kinds of people out there, you guys. Like, and you know, I mentioned this in another video where it's like, now is not the time to be naive, okay? So it's like, when you see videos out there of people talking about this was planned, this was a sacrifice, this was a ritual, it might have very well been planned, but not by the people that you necessarily think. Could it have been planned by Travis? It's possible that he had a plan to sneak people in. Did he plan for people to die? No, absolutely not. Okay, I don't think so. I don't think so. Okay, that's just my opinion. I think the whole people tragically dying thing was something else entirely. In my personal opinion, especially based off of these charts and how I read energy, that was a channel for some past life shit, okay? So for those who are saying that this was sacrificial, the only way that I see that as some kind of ritual for sacrifice, it was a ritual from like from the ancestral past, okay? It was like, so I mean, is it possible that there were people at that show who knew exactly what the fuck they were doing? Yeah, it's fucking possible. 55,000 people, like, I mean, I'm sure there's some killer mentalities, like, in that, you know, in that crowd. Like, you know, I guess what I'm saying is, like, you know, I mean, you just have to think of humans, like, realistically. It's just, like, just think about it in a common sense kind of way. But, like, when I see these videos online where they talk about, like, it was a ritual, it was a sacrifice, it was planned, that to me sounds like some past, it sounds to me like it sounds revolutionary. It sounds like maybe some form of revenge for some from some unresolved past life trauma and past life pain and things like that, needing to find a channel of expression, needing to find an outlet, okay? And I'm going to explain why I'm going to explain a little bit more about that energy when I talk about that South Node in Chiron and Cancer in the second house there. So yeah, you got his Pluto in Scorpio in conjunction with the Sun in Scorpio. And this is opposing that Sun in Taurus and that Uranus in Taurus. So this was this was definitely a very like revolutionary, rebellious, you know, it was definitely a dark energy. There was definitely some dark energy going on here. And like, even when we're talking about Pluto and Scorpio, we're talking about the Lord of the underworld. We are talking about the Lord of death, and in its home sign of Scorpio. But this is not necessarily something but Pluto, when we're talking about Pluto and Scorpio, this is not always a part of you that's completely conscious and completely aware of what you're doing and what's going on. This is some deep shit. This is shit that like, it's finding its channel. Okay, it's finding its channel. And Pluto and Scorpio is very much going to be tied to old trauma. Okay, Scorpio is very much tied to like trauma, past life trauma, just generally speaking. Just, you know, if you're just looking at Scorpio, if you're just looking at Pluto and Scorpio, there's a lot of past life regression issues coming here. There's a lot of healing that needs to be done. There's a lot of internal healing because there's this deep trauma that is being carried within you, and that trauma from like your past, from your ancestors, from you know, deep wounds that occurred with your ancestors that were maybe unable to come to be voiced, you know, It was unable to be voiced. It was unable to be spoken. So when you have this deeper energy going on inside you and you're unable to talk about it, if you don't have this ability to understand that deeper level and communicate it and like speak on it and understand what that energy means, it's going to find an outlet. It's going to find an outlet around its surrounding. It's going to find its way so that it can express itself, whether it's through death, whether it's through creating trauma for another person. It's kind of like repeating the same pattern. So like your own trauma can create trauma for another person, okay? And then the cycle goes on until you are able to address it and step into like a fuller state of awareness in regards to your own energy, okay? So, so like there definitely could have been, if he did have a certain awareness of that energy, his Pluto in Scorpio, which is largely unconscious, and I don't really know how tapped into that shit he is. Like, I mean, I literally like, you know, he might feel this deeper drive, but as far as like understanding the power of that energy and the implication of that energy, it's probably unlikely. Okay, most people who have Pluto and Scorpio don't completely comprehend the fullest, the full nature of that energy. Okay, unless they have other Scorpio placements in their chart, or unless they have other water, like, you know, something significant that kind of opens that up to an understanding. So, you know, and that's not something that I'm able to read over here at the moment. So, you know, there definitely might have been a deeper level of awareness. There might have been a deeper level of awareness. Is it possible that on a deeper level he was aware and could have stopped the show? I guess it's possible, you know, I guess anything is possible. Or could he have like, but his own wounds, his own traumas, his own unresolved, unhealed pain stopped him from stopping the show. That's how I would analyze that. Even if he was aware that something wasn't right on a deeper instinctual level, especially because he does have Pluto and Scorpio, like, I don't know, like, I do think that a lot of people who have Pluto and Scorpio aren't fully aware of the extent of their energy, or they don't want to be aware of it, or they're in denial of it. Or they are aware of it and they just try to use it to their advantage, okay? So, and this goes for all Pluto energy. Like, whatever sign your Pluto is in, it's still an energy that kind of literally needs to be brought up from the pit of your stomach. It's a very instinctual, soul level kind of energy. So I would say that even if on a deeper level he was aware that there was this element of that this energy of death was present, you know, like, especially because he has that Pluto and Scorpio within him, and the sun was in Scorpio at that moment, so the light was shining on this energy, okay? We were in Scorpio season, so the light on this energy was shining. So then that means that like it reinforces, and Pluto was in the 8th house. So it reinforces the energy to be present. It makes the energy like, it makes that kind of energy okay, right? It makes it like just a natural energy. It's just a natural part of the world. It's a natural part of life, okay? It reinforces it, You know, you got the sun in Scorpio, you got Pluto in his Pluto in Scorpio. It just kind of reinforces the energy of the crowd. It reinforces the energy that's within Travis. And any like ill will, like any like bad feelings about like the idea of death, that kind of like goes out the window a little bit. It kind of just becomes this instinctual, like, because like you don't think that they're like, you only know what you feel, and you kind of become unaware at that moment of like what other people might be going through or what other people might be feeling, right? Because this is the dominating energy. So I hope that's making sense. And like I said, because of his own past life trauma, that would have stopped him from stopping it. And it was trying to find a channel to express itself. And it had to, and that was how it needed to express itself. I mean, it's like, I know it's like rough and it's like difficult to accept, or like, well, not accept, but I don't know, like it's, you know, it feels like it's like death is a difficult thing to talk about, but it shouldn't be a difficult thing to talk about, in all honesty. Like, we just happen to be at a point in time in our society, in the world, where like I feel like people don't want to talk about death in any kind of realistic way, or in any kind of like educated way. But it's also very complex because it deals with a realm, it deals with a dimension that we don't really understand fully, right? We don't really fully understand that dimension. So let's get a little bit into that Cancer energy, and then I'm going to wrap this up, and we are going to finish up this particular Astroworld little series here, okay? So that Cancer, okay, so the other way that I would, now the other thing that I see is that because Travis's, so remember how I was talking about his South Node in Chiron in Cancer, and how that deals with like ancestral trauma, ancestral pain, and it was brought with him into this life, okay? Certain experiences that his ancestors went through, and this is just I'm just reading the chart, okay? I don't know the details about his life. I'm just going based off of how I understand energy working, especially in astrology. So in the past, his ancestors perhaps never had the right outlet to express their pain of things that they had to go through and experience, their trauma, their pain, trauma, and weren't able to fully heal, right? Because that, you know, so when you're unable to express pain and trauma within the system that you operate, if you're unable to do it, that energy gets passed on down the line from generation to generation to generation. And every generation that takes it on, that doesn't find a way, that doesn't express it for what it really is, that doesn't express truly what it feels like saying like, I have trauma from A, B, and C experience. I have pain because of what was done to me and my people, or things like that. When it's not expressed, it finds a channel that to live in. It's like an insect trying to survive. It finds a host, right? It finds a body to like feed on. Okay? All energy works like this. So when pain and trauma is not expressed, it gets passed down. Okay? So he came into this life carrying this wound. And it's tied to familial. It's tied to heritage because it's in Cancer. That's how I know, because it's in Cancer. It's tied to familial wounds. This energy that he carries with him, because it's conjunct the South Node, it's not being dealt with properly, okay? As long as that energy is not communicated properly, as long as that energy does not come out in an honest and authentic way, it's going to keep finding a channel for expression, which means it's going to create trauma and pain for other people, probably unconsciously, subconsciously or unconsciously. It will create that trauma and pain for another individual, as long as it stays unaware and uncommunicated and untalked about. And it's going to find its channel through other things. Guys, that is exactly what happened. Okay, the people who came out and talked about their experience at Astroworld, them coming out and talking about their trauma, the trauma they experienced at Astroworld, is the realization, is that pain and trauma, it found its channel, and now it came into realization. Okay? Do you see what I'm saying? Travis Scott's, because he's a famous ass fucking person and he affects a lot of people, and a lot of people were at this huge festival that he created, his unexpressed pain and trauma created a butterfly effect. Okay? It created a fucking butterfly effect. It channeled its way. Unfortunately, people died because of it. And in turn, especially because the North Node is in Capricorn, and that North Node in Capricorn, Travis Scott's North Node in Capricorn, is crowning and in conjunction with Astroworld Pluto in Capricorn in the 8th house. In the 8th house. So now, people who were at the show and who fought their way out and experienced everything they had to experience, it's being communicated. That trauma, that pain, all of that is it's finding its realization. It's finding its realization and its purpose through the structures of the system, right? So I heard that Travis is paying for people's like mental health care now, okay, so that people can, you know, talk about the trauma that they experienced. And it now all of this has now created with his North Node in Capricorn, crowning that Pluto in Capricorn for Astroworld, it has created a kind of purpose. It has created a kind of like, for this particular instance, you know, it has created a kind of like a kind of destiny or a challenge or a purpose for him to try to help these people who experience trauma and pain. Now, I'm not saying that he's not aware of his own traumas and pain, because I watched this one YouTube video where these guys were talking about how, like, when George Floyd died, Travis Scott, I think for the first time ever, kind of came out and kind of like made some statements, you know, about like just, you know, about oppression and how, like, you know, it's unfortunate that like his brothers and sisters are still dying and stuff like that. And like how he wanted to do something to help. But then like, and the people on the YouTube channel or the video that I watched mentioned that he, like, after he just made a couple of statements, they had this like opinion that people who were maybe around him, like maybe his managers or his like public, you know, like the people who kind of like look out for him because of his like fame and stuff like that, they had this impression that people were telling him to shut up, or that people were telling him not to talk about things like that. And I found that interesting, because like it's like he was clearly triggered by the events that were happening in 2020 to kind of like, you know, to want to step up and become, you know, he was clearly feeling something inside of him that was propelling him, because I think that he was probably able to sense that, you know, that by like him helping or whatever, it could, you know, heal some of his own wounds that he might be feeling, you know, from all that like past life type of stuff. And he like mentioned, you know, wanting to be like a tool or something like that, you know, like he wants to feel like he can like do something, like he could be part of the change, you know, he could be part of like, you know, helping this movement or something like that. But then like you never heard anything from him again. And I decided to like research a little bit on this. And I only found like one article or something like that where he like just kind of like says, you know, like, oh yeah, I want to be, I don't remember, you know, don't quote me, I don't remember exactly, but it was just something, you know, he was like he was expressing his sympathies and like, you know, just kind of like, it sounded to me like he was really speaking from his heart, you know, like he was really speaking from his heart. And that's the only time that I really ever, I think, not that I follow Travis Scott interviews or anything like that, because I don't even know how he talks, like, but it seemed like something that really came from his heart, you know, something that really meant something to him. But he only like spoke on it briefly and then like never spoke on it again. So you can't help but wonder if there were people around him telling him like not to get involved or like not to talk about it, you know, or not to like go public with something like that, you know. So there's a bit of mystery there too, and you know, it just kind of makes me feel like, well, maybe that was, I mean, obviously, like, what's done is done, but it's like, maybe that is part of his destiny, you know, because he has that Chiron conjunct that South Node, and the North Node is really supposed to bring, it's really supposed to bring that deeper knowledge, that knowledge that you carried with you from a past life. It is supposed to bring it into this, like, place of awareness that kind of creates your path. And with his North Node in Capricorn, I just find it interesting, you know, because now, you know, Capricorn, now he's creating and paying for other people to have an outlet to kind of like express their trauma and things like that. So now it's like, I wouldn't be surprised, in all honesty, if Travis, like, maybe eventually one day, or I don't know when, but ultimately kind of like decides to maybe like invest his money or to invest invest in like helping his community and in helping people who do still suffer and deal with a lot of pain and a lot of trauma and suffering because of the system that we live in, because of this system that we live in. So I don't know, that could be part of like his destiny, that could be part of his vision for the future. I mean, who knows what 2022 is going to bring. I know his album 𝚁𝚎𝚟𝚘𝚘𝚘 is supposed to come out. So like, he, oh God, but it's also very possible that he's still undergoing his own transformations. Like, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what goes on behind the scenes. I don't know if he sees a therapist or something like that, or he does talk about things with someone like, who, I mean, I don't know any of that, but it's like, I guess, this, like I said, this is investigative astrology. So it's like, it's all just kind of like, speculation at this point. But, but with his 𝚁𝚎𝚟𝚘𝚘𝚘 album coming out and the fact that like this whole event, the whole, the true dystopia is here. The end is only like a new beginning. They'll see you on the other side. That kind of sounds like he's making him his own personal self and his own artistic self. He's kind of forcing himself to go through some kind of transformation. He's forcing himself to be reborn, and it's like kind of showing itself through his artistry, which will in turn put him on the right path. It will in turn like put him on this path where perhaps like he is meant to help people, and perhaps he is truly meant to heal people, especially people who might share in his feelings, share in his own personal journey, share some similar feelings and experiences in regards to his own personal journey, okay? And that would kind of be like his completion. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense, but that's definitely kind of the energy that I get here, okay? So as far as the whole like, oh, that was, as far as the whole, it was a ritual, it was sacrificial, like literally, I guess it just comes down to what you believe in. Like if you believe that a tribe in one part of the world can like sing chants of deaths and people dying, and it'll happen in another part of the world, like the butterfly effect. Maybe it was tied to some ritual somewhere on Earth. Do I think it was like planned by Travis and Live Nation? No, not at all. Energetically speaking, it was a channel that needed to find an outlet because the current system we live in is not providing that outlet. Okay? That energy needed to find its outlet in order to create a channel in which it can be expressed in the outside world. And unfortunately, people had to die. So if anyone is going to ride the wave of it was sacrificial, it was a ritual, the only thing that I can say is if it, like, I honestly don't even feel like it just doesn't sit well with me to say that it was that. It just kind of like, kind of like irks me like that, because I just don't think, because like I would never, ever, 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 ever in my life think to submit a human being's life to and treat it as if it was for the purpose of some other force without them even having any kind of say or will in it. Absolutely the fuck not. Even if that was the case, even if there are people who do believe that's what it was, I would kind of be like, I would personally feel like the people who feel that way and think that way, I kind of feel like you're dehumanizing. In a way, it's like dehumanizing the people who died. Like calling them a sacrifice or calling them, you know, just like a vessel. In all honesty, I kind of see Travis Scott more as like the vessel. Like he was the vessel for this to happen. That's in all honesty, like he was the vessel. I would never, I just can't even fathom expressing that a human life was in some kind of sacrificial ritual that they had no fucking idea or wanted to be part of or knew they were part of. That's kind of disgusting to me, in all honesty. That's kind of like disturbing and it's gross. Okay. And I'd like to think a little better about human beings, even though like I'm not naive by any means. Like I have common sense. I just prefer the route of humanity, and I just prefer like an honest. I prefer like I just like I don't know, like if there are people out there who find some kind of pleasure, if there are people out there who do find some kind of pleasure out of the fact that like people died at this concert, like that just like ugh. That's just gross. Like it's just it's just like it's just gross, you guys. It's just gross, okay? Like I don't know. Like get some morals or something. Like I don't know, dude. Like y'all are on just like some really fucking wicked ass shit, and it's disgusting. In all honesty, it's fucking disgusting. So, and I don't know, probably just like don't even watch my channel or something. I don't even know what to say, but like, I don't even know how to respond at this point. Like now I'm just kind of like kind of grossed out, you know? I don't know, maybe I'll address it at some other point in the future, but, yeah, so honestly, like this is, you know, my conclusion of this. This is how I feel about all of this. You know, every single person that died that night and even after that, they had their own beautiful, complex ways about them. They had their own energies. They were completely and utterly their own person and completely and utterly their own, you know, made up of their own energies and their own magic. And, you know, they had their own dreams and their own visions, and, you know, they had their own beautiful souls and spirits, and it's really sad. I mean, you know, that people had to experience, like, had to go through experiencing this, you know, like it's just like, you know, when I first started following this story, like I was just so like, like touched by it. Like I was just, I don't know, like it just kind of like, it really hit me like on a deeper level, and I mean, there is no amount of imagination can really put me in that position and really to where I can really, really know and say like what that feels like. But, I tried, like I was absorbing the stories that I was listening to because like I just wanted to help. It helped me heal. It helped me understand how deep people are, and it just like moved me, okay? And it ultimately just made me feel like compelled to do these videos. Because it just like it opened a portal in me too, okay? It found a channel, like it found a channel through me as well to express myself and to open that portal, okay? And to like open that part of me up so I can also share in my own experience and become like, like part of the community in my own way, because I do love music and I do, I know that music ties the soul. People become tied to music because of the feeling it gives you. And, music is just, I think that the biggest thing, like as a 37-year-old woman, because music has always been such a big part of my life, and concerts and festivals, is just like, I used to like create my identity almost around music. I used to identify so much with music. The only difference now is that I am my own person. Like music will always be a part of my life. It will always be a part of my life. But I don't need music to identify myself. I don't need music to tell me who I am as a person. And if there is anything that I can say to the people who have watched these videos and have followed me with these videos, and if I can provide any form of conclusion for any young person or for anyone who like obsesses over famous people and all these like big time like stars and stuff like that, is just like, know who you do, like enjoy music, enjoy art, like all of that. And like, yeah, if you're creating your own music, if you want to be a musician, then of course like you're gonna have a different kind of connection to music. Like if you're like, oh, I want to be, a musician, or I want to be famous, but I just urge people like to find your spirituality. Like I just because anybody who becomes powerful, whether you're a musician or a famous person or an actor or a politician, like if you are not completely whole within yourself, and if you are not completely healed within yourself, like you manifest and you project your own insecurities and your own like, I would just say, if there is anything to just take away from all this, is like know who you are as a human being. Like don't let anything or anyone else, not media, not people, not friends, not even family, like don't let people tell you who you are. Like really go on that journey. Really go on that journey of discovering who you are and how you feel inside, and what you want to identify as. What do you want to identify with? Like I I still have some, you know, really wicked rockin' like, you know, music on my Spotify. Like I've always, like on this deeper soul level, like angry music heals me. Like I feel healed sometimes when I listen to angry music, okay? And that's just a personal preference. I listen to so many different kinds of music, but I like to discover bands on Spotify, and like, but like who I am is not tied to the music that I listen to. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, just know who you are and know who you want to be in this world. And that's all I'm going to say. And that wraps this up, you guys. Okay. So, hopefully you enjoyed. If you're new to my channel, check out my tarot videos. And I hope you enjoyed this series. Until next time, bye.